Thank you so much, Adam, for the intro. I appreciate it. Thank you again for inviting me to this event. I want to switch it over to you and thank you and the team. I've taken a look at the agenda over the past few days, and it's fantastic. The lineup, the speaker lineup is great. Lee's opening session just set a tone that actually is what everyone wanted to hear. So again, I want to thank you. Today's session is going to be, like you said, an operators only session. So I'm really excited to have them on board. The team, as you can see on the screen, is with us. We've got Lee, who was our keynote speaker again, Patricia from BP, Lee from Equinor, and Stefan from Shell again. Before we go in, I'd like to give you sort of a general view of what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to be addressing sort of the what, why, how of the digital twin. We're going to be talking again a little bit specific about breaking down the silos, a little bit about the partnership, the industry standards. So before I do that, I want to pass it on, and I want to have the team introduce themselves. We'll start off, as always, with the ladies, Leen, then Patricia, and then the gents, Stefan, and finally our keynote. So, Leen, the mic is yours.
Thank you very much for introducing, and thank you for being allowed to share our perspectives on the digital twin from Equinor. So I'm Line Bakkevig. I head up a program in Equinor called Field of the Future. So I'm part of our digital center excellence. And in my day work, I primarily focus then on the field development and asset development part of our value chain, preparing then for a data-driven operation of our assets. And digital twin has been a kind of a core area for us the last couple of years.
Perfect. So we'll move on to Patricia from BP.
Hello, Rami and everyone in the panel and everyone in the conference today. My name is Patricia. I have to say the privilege of working with BP during this exciting transformation that we're going through and that our industry is actually going through. I work in the engineering and in the innovation and engineering organization, which is the home for our digital organization. I work as the Vice President of Intelligent Operations. So in my team, we have the responsibility of creating or leading the incubation of and the integration of innovative digital technologies that we will be using in our production and operations teams. Digital twins is actually one of those technology solutions that sits under my responsibility for production and operations. I'm a petroleum engineer by background, joined digital around a couple of years ago, and I have been in the upstream business for around 25 years with BP. So very happy to be here and look forward to learning a lot throughout the day and during this panel as well.
Excellent. Thank you, Patricia. I'll move on to Stefan from Shell.
Yeah, thanks, Rami, and thanks to everybody for having me today. It's quite exciting to speak on that panel. Very exciting to be in that entire area of the digital twin. I'm the global process owner for integrity and reliability in Royal Dutch Shell, and also the decision executive for the digital twin program in Shell. My background, process engineering and chemistry. I worked decades in the field at assets, at producing assets, and now it's really, really exciting to bring our steel into a digital form that also people who are working remotely can touch the steel, can see the steel, and can deliver value to us as a company. Thanks again.
Excellent. And last but not least, Lee, you've given us the keynote. I'm going to go easy on you in this panel session, so I'll leave you towards the end. But for now, can you please reintroduce yourself to those that just joined?
Yeah, thanks, Rami. So my name is Lee Hodder. I've been the VP Digital Transformation for the upstream part of Shell for about 18 months. My background quite varied. So I started life as a process engineer, but then spent time in the construction world on LNG and GTL in the Middle East before moving more into the commercial space, most recently having spent time in Norway and Denmark before returning to The Hague. My my link to digital twin, I work with people like Stefan very closely. My scope is more trying to figure out how to be the voice of the business and trying to bring some of these technologies in an integrated fashion into our assets. Thanks, Rami.
Excellent. What a panel. So that's really good. I'm really, really excited and happy to be with you guys here today. So as Adam mentioned, today and tomorrow, we're going to be talking about the digital twin. We're going to deep dive into it. We're going to dig into it. We're going to see the uses, the benefits, some of the risks, and other scenarios. For now, and just as a start, I want to ask each one of you to give me a sentence or a paragraph of what the word digital twin means to you. And I don't want it to be related only to energy, but just actually in our globe. What does it mean? What does digital twin mean? We'll start in reverse this time. So Stefan, if you don't mind.
Yeah. So we in Shell, we have a very unique definition, I think, of a digital twin. For us, a digital twin is really the virtual presentation of the physical elements and the dynamic behavior of an asset over its life cycle. It's a very broad statement, but it's very content rich in my eyes. And our digital twin is defined more or less through 3 building blocks, which is data, come to that a little bit later in the panel discussion, is the asset visualization. I think that's the part which is most appealing on the digital twin, because people just see the stuff from wherever they are. And then the last building block, and this is really looking deep into the future, is about modeling using predictive analytics and artificial intelligence. It addresses 3 key elements, or 4 key elements. For us as a company, it's really around goal zero, about no harm, no leaks. It's about people really have them productive and be inspired, support optimal asset operations, and last but not least, and Lee mentioned that already in his note, it's really about competitive projects, where we say it's really from the source to our customers, from the reservoir to the market.
Okay, that's perfect. Patricia, would you like to add on to that?
Thanks, Stefan. I think we actually coincide on that definition quite a lot. For us, in simple terms, a digital twin is a virtual representation of something in the real world. So it could be a virtual representation of something physical, like an asset, or it could be something more conceptual, like a business process. One thing that I just want to add is we think about digital twins as many twins rather than one technology. But the one thing that I want to highlight is what we want to have is a single data brain that feeds the multiple twins that we are creating. So, Stefan, you mentioned one of the components of the twin being the data. We completely agree with that, but that's where you need to drive kind of integration and interoperability. Because the intent is that it doesn't matter how many versions of a twin you have, you need to be efficient in scaling those twins that you're creating.
Excellent. No, thank you for that feedback, Patricia. And Leen, if you have any additions to what was said, what do you think?
Sure. Yes, sure. I really think that we can recognize the definition and how we interpret it. And for us, this is the sum of all the data we have, and it evolves. And I think we can say this is kind of infinite in the way that we will never see a final version. We will evolve and develop together with partners and suppliers into this. And we do not see this as one single technology or one specific product or kind of something you can buy from the market or something you can put to one department. So this is all about collaboration, how we develop. And for us, our cloud-based data platform is really the heart and the brain of this digital twin, the data we have. At the same time, it's so important. And Lee did also mention that in his conversation in the end about this is to create value for the business, is to make sure we have safe operations, that we develop and become more efficient and create the value and supporting the business ambitions. So very much bringing things together and collaborating across to create this core of data.
Excellent. Well, great. I jotted a few notes here, and I sort of, if you guys don't mind, I summarized. I stole a couple of points from everyone, but it's sort of, in my view, what I think a digital twin is. It's a a digital representation of a physical product throughout its life cycle. So from design all the way to software to operations to servicing to maintenance to even decom. So you've got the whole life cycle of it, and especially in collaboration with that life cycle. So I believe if that's sort of where and what it is, that's what we were thinking about. Now, if we want to redig back into the energy industry specifically, why is it important and where do we see implementations of digital twins? And I'll leave that to Patricia with BP.
Thanks, Rami. Energy companies are not only facing the challenges that most industries are facing due to the pandemic at the moment, but we're also facing an imperative to transition to lower carbon solutions. BP, for example, announced last year our ambition to be net zero by 2050 or sooner, and to help the world get to net zero. We are reinventing BP into a leaner, faster moving, lower carbon company, so agility is at the core of achieving our goals. We announced a new strategy from an international to an integrated energy company. So we think the world's energy problems and opportunities are actually getting more and more complex and require higher levels of integration and collaboration to enable efficient multi-energy systems. The world is changing very fast, and the pace of transformation and innovation is becoming even more critical. So this is why I believe digital twins are becoming very important in our transformation. I think the problems and the opportunities that we are trying to tackle now are becoming more and more complex. Digital twins have the potential to unlock significant value from our data. We have many years of historical data that needs to be leveraged. We need to increase collaboration across silos. We're moving also in our industry from an application-based ecosystem to a data-based ecosystem, which is enabling and it's unlocking a lot of value as well. So this new ecosystem will allow us to drive a lot of data-driven insights throughout, as you said, the asset life cycle. So we have opportunities to underpin significant efficiency improvements that will lead to reduced costs, improve margins, represent significant opportunities from a safety and carbon reduction perspective as well. We have loads of those opportunities in flight in BP. During the pandemic, for example, we've seen significant value from digital twins to enable us to operate remotely, to communicate and collaborate with the facilities without the need to mobilize people to the facilities. We've had plenty of examples of digital twins that have enabled us to augment the human brain and lead complex optimization functions. Apex, for example, in our production facilities is a really good example of a twin of our production system that has delivered a significant amount of value in BP and has unlocked a lot of optimization opportunities in our production systems. And we're now expanding it to include the facilities, which is a solution that we're calling Vertex. This has been done through our collaboration with the company, with Palantir. So that's why I think there are multiple versions of the twin that can help us unlock multiple value opportunities. Digital twins can also be instrumental, Rami, in enabling the energy transition, I think. They will provide an opportunity to integrate and optimize complex energy systems. So there's a ton of potential in that space, which is why I believe that data integration and interoperability will be quite important as we move forward into this complexity. So with all these opportunities in mind, I think it's important to highlight that that we cannot, I think, Lynn, you said it before, we cannot deliver this with a single platform, single tool. This needs to be a very collaborative environment that is enabled by multiple players.
That's fantastic. No, that's a very, very well put answer of the why and the where. Lynn, Patricia mentioned you then. Do you have any addition to what she said on why and where you would see the applications of digital twin within our energy field?
Yes, sure. I think I would pick up to where kind of Patricia also mentioned on the energy transition. We are so in the middle of this from an operator perspective, and kind of developing into an optimized and focused oil and gas portfolio and accelerating our renewables business. At the same time, we are to build new low carbon solutions, and we need to think different, and we need really to utilize data and experience and share learnings across to enable this transition. So if you are kind of to move into more specific examples from Equinor, we now stream data from all of our 26 fields in the Norwegian continental shelf and internationally, and we also do stream kind of data from our offshore wind assets, and we do kind of on the back end we do apply very much of the same technology, and when it comes to analytics and then understanding kind of the health of our equipment, and that is really to see then how we develop into and this is important in the change as well. For the analytics part, we do work then with the data scientists together with the discipline engineers to develop those machine learning models, and this is something we really then can utilize across. Further, we've also put quite some efforts into kind of how can we meet all our operators and employees, and the visualization part is also has been really important for us, as also kind of when it comes to the culture and competence part. How can we talk a lot about those advanced analytics, but also bringing and contextualizing data and information to users. We have quite kind of success with how we bring the 3D model together with the relevant information out in the field, out to the operators, out to our suppliers, and then we see then a strength kind of collaboration and having kind of the same situational awareness. Maybe not that fancy, but still very much of value, and then giving kind of the first introduction to a lot of our employees and partners. So that is some kind of more specific examples on why this is relevant for us.
This is great. Thank you, both of you, for this information. So now, back to the what, why, how. We know what it is. We know why and sort of where. Now we're going to get into the most important part, which is how. But, mentioning and picking up from both of you, you kept mentioning data, and data is king. So at some point, we need to understand how important is data. And I'm going to let Stefan open up with sort of answering a couple of questions of what can data do? What do we need to focus on when we're extracting, we're filtering? And what message does leadership need to understand about the importance of data? So Stefan, please.
Yeah, thanks. And just looking back and what Lena said, but also Patricia, why we are doing the digital twin. We do the digital twin for our people. As mentioned before by Lee and the question from Adam, it's not another IT application. It's really about making our life easier for our people in the field, people doing engineering, doing the maintenance, doing the turnaround planning, etc. Really have direct access to data. But let me start explaining a little bit why data is so important. Let me look through the lenses of an operator, an end user of a digital twin. So can you imagine you get asked to provide information and you come back within minutes and provide the answers? Yeah. Normally that would take days or weeks in the past, yeah, but it's not magic anymore if you have your data integrated in a digital twin environment. This is why we do digital twin, and this is why we think data is so important. For us, the digital twin data, yeah, what we maintain is really the elixir and the key building block of a digital twin, as I mentioned before. The outcome of digital twin and its value delivery is heavily dependent on the data availability and quality. But one item I really would like to share about data quality: do not wait to start with a digital twin deployment implementation to have perfect data, because we all know perfect is different than good, And good is already good enough if you start with a digital twin implementation, because a digital twin also, especially the integration of the data, will help you to understand your differences, your shortcomings on the data side, so you can continuously improve the quality of your data. One of the biggest value cases out of the digital twin when it comes to data is really it drives decisions, all the different use cases in a digital twin environment. And we all know decisions based on data rely heavily on the data quality. So ask yourself, what is your quality, what you really need at the end of the day. Rami, you asked a little bit around the leadership part in the data world, in the digital twin. So at the end, data is a new gold. Yeah, in the past it was the black gold, but now data is a new gold and needs to be treated as such. Lee mentioned in his presentation somewhere on one of the slides, data is not sexy. I think data is very sexy and can be very, very appealing, but we need to treat data as an asset, and that requires attention and has a high value. We all know we invest a hell of money to keep our steel up, but when it comes to data, quite often we forget that data is an asset, like steel, what we have installed in our producing assets. However, only data that get used, reviewed, embedded in the decision process has value. And this, I think, where the leadership part kicks in. So because data would sit somewhere unused, is just waste. It's just death capital at the end of the day. So handling data in the right form requires leadership. Leaders must show interest in the collected data. They need to challenge the quality, provide feedback, and must use it to drive decisions and really drive decisions, not only make decisions. And on the other hand, also, you can use data also to measure your performance and use it as a leader, as input for your long-term business planning and your strategy. As Lee mentioned, we are absolutely not short on data points. I think we have billions, trillions of data points sitting somewhere. But do we really understand what is the critical data to run our business to prevent an overflow of data in our digital twin environment? And if you read literature and you speak to other industry partners, somewhere between 20, maybe 40% of the data is really value generating. Everything else is unnecessary data, and it's only additional load on a digital twin. So really make sure when you start to collect data that you collect the right data, and you collect the right data or ask others to collect the right data, which is really value driven and not just another data point filled somewhere and for the sake of data collection to make sure that you have the right data in hands. Digital twin use cases normally are very intent-based and performance-driven, and asset performance will be reflected in the data. So the data, what you have is also a measure for your health of your asset, the health of your performance in your asset at the end of the day. And that gets very visible through the digital twin, through the visualization. And last but not least, data must be kept evergreen. It's really worth an effort to maintain the data, keep the data in order, and not making a one-time data cleanup and then the data disappears and you have the same, I would call it mess in a couple of years from now again, because you have not maintained your data. So it's really about, you have to apply very robust management of change on your data points. Just looking into the digital twin as an application, an IT application for us, digital twin is just a connector, and it's really the window into our assets. And therefore, data must flow seamlessly from one application to the next, but it should be maintained only in one master source. Data does not stop at one application and must be accessible and visible to all the users. And this is where the integration and the visualization of a digital twin will really do great things for you. And then, looking a little bit into the future, so the new ways of working, like remote working, etc., really requiring a full integration of data available on the fingertip, connected to the equipment. I always say the data needs to sit next to the steel, what you see. And on the long term, the data will really significantly change our ways of working. Be honest, in 10 years from now, our working world will look dramatically different than today. with process integration and holistic views, all based of data, and they are the key elements to support our transformation at the end of the day. And it's all for our people, doing the work every day.
No, that's a very valid point. Thank you, Stefan. That was pretty detailed. I want to pass it off to Patricia if she has any additions to that and share with us a little bit about what BP's consideration for data is and how you guys are handling it and managing through it. So if you have anything to add.
Thanks, Rami. Lynn and Stefan have already mentioned already. For us, data, Elena said, the brain and the heart of the twin. So therefore, data quality, data has a critical role in deploying and scaling digital twin technology at pace. What we have done in BP, we've created an organization called DataWorks, which is purely focusing on taking care of that data and building our data models, our data ontologies, and making that data available. We're actually creating and building capability, data management capability in the company. So we actually have a new discipline in our reinvented BP through our data and analytics discipline. So we're investing a lot on that capability. Our DataWorks organization was created several years ago, and it's now expanding into the overall, the total production and refining business. And it's also there is a DataWorks organization that is also supporting us in the customers and market space. So it has now, we have that capability now in the new reinvented BP deployed across the whole organization. So that demonstrates how much we recognize the value of that data integration. So we're very keen to create that data abstract layer, right? So that we can remove the silos from the different data sources that we have created over time. So that, for me, that robust data integration layer is a huge enabler, and we're actually in the process of testing the value of that data layer to demonstrate it actually the value in terms of scalability and pace. Because once you invest on that data layer, deploying use cases from one facility to another becomes extremely simple, and it's actually quite low cost and fast. That's exactly what we're trying to prove here, is that investment helps you accelerate your journey significantly and helps you reduce cost over time.
Excellent. No, that's a great summary. And I'm going to touch on and pick up of a comment that you said, which brings us on to our next topic, which is the governance and deployment itself. So you mentioned silos. We're known as an industry that's silo friendly. Let me put it this way. In the past, whether it's within our own disciplines or within division, between division to division, or even company to company or industry to industry. So Lee, you've been quiet for a while, so I'm going to jump on this part right now, where I'd like you to give us a little bit about what your thoughts on the governance and deployment is related to the digital twin.
Sure, and maybe I can share our own experience with Stefan on the line, and then go from there. So I think we approach almost kind of a local and a global split. So I think from a global perspective, we clearly have kind of governance set up where we and Stefan is his role as kind of the main decision executive. He sort of is the custodian of that consistency, as it were. So with our global partners in the digital twin. He has access to a team that makes sure that we have kind of we have the horsepower internally in order to deploy, and we have that consistent knowledge from deployment to deployment. And that's also the central team that can then engage with our assets or what we call performance units to understand what type of use case is going to be most suitable for them. And then they provide the bridge to our vendors. I think that's working well, and it also gives, at the global level, it allows us to have discussions on interoperability between digital twin versus our other global initiatives like our AI platform, for example, or our connected worker platform. So I think that works well at the global level. At the local level, I think this is where we're still kind of sharpening it, but I think my experience at the local level, that's really where the real life integration happens. So clearly we need to make sure that any use cases go hand in hand with the local team and an asset to say what's really useful for them or not. But from experience, that's also the point where the local teams start to say, well, hang on, there's some interface issues or there's some interoperability issues, which then is great feedback to the global programs. We've had some really good examples, which has also fed into back into the collaboration space. Again, I'm actually I'm pleased that we've got so many of our kind of partner vendors on the line, but that we've been examples, for example, where you have a work being done by Bentley or Futuron in the GOM, great work. We're also then talking about how do we leverage Kongsberg in the digital twin context in our operate phase, and so the local kind of governance and the local insights there actually give us those insights on how do we actually have those more concrete discussions with the vendors. So it's a bit of a circle. And then on the deployment, again, it's a bit of I think, so it is an element of learning by doing. So I think the more and more that we do, the better we get, even though each deployment is slightly different with a slightly different use case, the foundations are similar. So again, to Patricia's point, you are starting to see almost kind of critical mass of the learnings that we've got, just allowing it to be more and more efficient as we go.
Excellent. And I'd like to also hear from Lee from Equinor on this. What are you guys doing in relation to governance and deployment with the digital twin?
Yeah, to pick up on Lee's reflection, I think interoperability is a key word for us. It comes in so many dimensions. It comes how do we kind of during the engineering phase can bring data to get kind of from one company to the other for the very deep supply chain we have. It comes also then into operations, how we are really able to kind of connect the OT and IT world. It's about interoperability and the flow of data from the plant floor to the cloud. So many dimensions, and this has to be governed, and then this has to be consciously worked on. And the example I often use is how we very much in upstream oil and gas, we talk a lot about the flow assurance, and we are so concerned about the flow assurance. And the parallel to me is kind of the flow assurance on the data, not the hydrocarbons. So how can we create those kind of data pipelines and really see that we also systematically, from a system engineering perspective, have a conscious view on this. From the equipment and the sensors via the data gateways and through kind of common protocols, and we will probably discuss a little bit on standardization also as well. So with the kind of the growth we have and the development we have over the last year, we see that kind of data is more and more used. There are more and more people involved, and we need to kind of have a stricter governance on this. And in Equinor, we do not believe kind of on a centralized governance. We provide a data platform. We provide kind of systems, tools, and best practice, but it has to be a business ownership to that data and really owning this and kind of. And then we talk also about the leadership dimension and putting this as a strategic asset and putting this on the priority list, top priority of what you do. So we are kind of, I guess, in the transition of really now enabling that to the business within certain frames. Talk about the data products where there is kind of a common understanding of the quality of the data, so that data can be trusted because the users they goes across silos, and it has to be kind of trusted data that is provided, so that ownership from kind of a producer perspective is extremely important for us going forward within kind of certain frames.
That's excellent. Well, thank you both for that answer. And following up on my next point, which is the standardization and a generally interoperable platform, which Lee mentioned earlier. Patricia, what are your views and what are your thoughts about the general standardization? Is it happening? Are we progressing through it? Are we becoming interoperable as a company or between companies? Can you share your thoughts about that as well?
Rami, I think with the challenges, I guess, that the industry is facing and the huge opportunities we have in front of us, everyone, I think, has agreed that interoperability is key. And a lot of companies are focusing now more and more on making our data platforms open and available for more innovation. We've made significant progress, I have to say. I think from a point of view of data standards, I believe in recent years we've seen a great level of collaboration. The mindset, I think, is moving, the mindset of the industry players, including operators and suppliers, is moving more towards greater collaboration. And I've seen a lot of sharing amongst operators and suppliers through forums like the OSDU, IOGP, World Economic Forum. There are lots of different examples. In the subsurface, for example, we've seen great progress through OSDU in the definition and creation of open data platforms. So the topic is becoming more and more important as we move through this complexity. Most recently, we've seen great collaborations in various forums between the different OSDU, IOGP. So there is greater need to collaborate. But I still think the journey in front of us is quite significant. We still have a lot of work to be done. And I believe from an operator's perspective, I think I'm convinced that we need to enable that open data platform at pace. So greater collaboration from an operator's and supplier's perspective is extremely important. We need to enable this open data platform to be accelerated, because for me, that's a key enabler of pace, as I said, and innovation, which is extremely needed. We need to open the space for many players to operate and give us ideas and opportunities, innovative ideas and opportunities that we can bring into our ecosystem. As I said before, the twin space is not going to be a single player, a single supplier anymore, single technology anymore. It needs to be a highly collaborative environment, and that creation of an open data platform that the industry can collaborate on is an extremely important step. So a lot of progress, in my opinion, but still a long journey to go in front of us.
Yeah, I would agree. I see the same thing. I see there's a lot of progress moving on in the collaborations. We've reached a level where we're sitting in conferences such as these, and we're discussing openly what our targets and what our plans are. But this sort of brings me back to, and I want to ask all of you now, because this table right here is key decision makers in operator companies. So what is your view on partnerships? What do you feel like? Is it essential that we partner as an operator or as an operator vendor or as a joint industry project or bring in the universities? How do you feel partnerships are starting and are going to be progressing? This is a question for all. Stefan, I'd like you to start and we can move across the table.
Yeah, I think it's utmost important that we have partnerships with our vendors. Even the digital twin, the idea, I think it's approximately 20 years old. We are still learning, as Lee said. We are still on a journey, and that only works in a strong partnership with vendors to drive this integration. We really make sure that we are addressing it at the right level. And what is also important from my point of view, all our assets, producing assets, they have a different starting point. So really developing a unified technology platform with the vendors, it's important. But then also understanding what the assets really need, and that can differ significantly, and that only works in a collaboration with the vendors. If you try to do that in-house, it will not work and it will not be sustainable.
Lee, your views on partnership?
Yeah, I very much agree that the partnerships across is so important, and that's kind of the nature of our business, I really believe. And Patricia did mention OSDU, which is a huge initiative with extreme efforts put in by very many stakeholders. In the facility domain, we do not have the same, I would say. We are still kind of, it's even more complex. The parties involved in the value chain are very broad. So I think it's very important. And from this event, I recognize quite a few of the sponsors, and we collaborate closely with several of them. But also when it comes more into back to the standardization efforts, I think as being in the middle of the energy transition, we also need to look out of the traditional upstream oil and gas kind of space when we collaborate and when we learn. We in Equinor, we could put quite some interest into the industry 4.0 and learning from what's kind of happening in manufacturing and how that will impact us. And we know that from a supplier perspective, a lot of our suppliers and partners there, they do kind of supply across different industries. And for us, this looking into and specifically into the digital twin, we quite some interest into asset administration, Shell and OPC UA and the automation ML, and how that is kind of also from a partner perspective an integral part of how we collaborate across the value chain going forward.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. Lee, you've tapped on this a few times in your keynote and in this session, but again, do you have any comments on partnership or views that you want to add?
I think I've said, I guess it's just, for me, it's kind of more of a mindset shift that we're seeing. I think in the past, I guess 15 years ago when I kind of came into the industry, the mindset was very much we'll build ourselves and do it ourselves unless we can't. Whereas I think now it's almost the complete 180 degree where we should partner and collaborate unless we can't. And in many cases where we can't, it's going to be driven more by the anti-competition stuff where clearly we can't go across. But without crossing those lines, I think we should collaborate as much as possible. And I think I see it's not only between kind of vendors and operators, but also between operators, to be blunt. I mean, I think I'm seeing kind of more and more discussions on things like greenhouse gas collaborations, on logistics collaborations, where they're all just, there's so many opportunities out there. So we just need to be a bit more open-minded, I think. And it's happening in some areas faster than others, but it is happening.
That is true. It is happening, and you can note it. Patricia, off to you. Anything about partnerships that you'd like to add? You've said it.
Yeah.
You opened the topic for it.
Thank you. I think Lee said it. We are moving to a different partnership landscape, I will say. We are, rather than a transactional buy relationship, we are moving more to a collaboration and potentially co-investment or co-innovation space where we can have multiple players working together to deliver innovative technologies. So for us, I think the partnership space is instrumental to help us actually get access to capabilities that will be quite important, actually, that we may not have today. There is no one, I think, that we've seen that has everything in one box. So you need to bring many players together to get through the transformation at pace, which is what we need. So for us, I think partnerships, and we have many strategic partnerships that we have announced recently with big players, and we're also opening the space for smaller players because we need to encourage that innovation across big and smaller players. So it's a rich space, but I think the relationships are changing from a transactional to a more strategic collaboration approach.
I agree completely. I sort of see it as you know, where the industry is like a big bubble and we're in that bubble, and then we've got little tentacles with smaller bubbles coming up, and all of these are just feeding in, and it's just a growing cycle. So I like to visualize things. But again, guys, this has been a fantastic chat. I know we've got about 10 minutes left, so I'll use about 3-4 of them so that you can give your closing remarks and takeaways. I'd like, if anything, the audience to take away one thing from what was said today, and each one of you sort of think about it. Liam, I'll start with you.
Thank you. So kind of for me, this is very much about how we are able to then kind of transform the way we work and build the competence across. And that's not limited to our company, that's limited to that's kind of applies for the whole industry. And and the partnerships, and we didn't mention academia, but for sure the how we collaborate and how we work on that is really important, and bring in new employees, new talents to this. We see that we are moving, but again, to move, we need to bring along with the total kind of community, and how we then focus and bring data into this, and how we are able to then connect technology and people. That is what I will bring along.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Stefan, any closing remarks or takeaway notes for the audience?
Yeah, I think would like to stress again that entire thing around leadership and how important leadership is in the space of digitalization, the digital twin. And it's really about the leaders making sure everybody understands in the company at an asset how the digital twin fits into the overall strategy, because the digital twin is only one element, how we do business, and really what is the value case for the digital twin for the company, and that needs to come from leaders. You can't leave that to others, and they really need to make sure that message is really going down, trickling down into the organizations at the different levels, and translated in understandable language at the end of the day.
Yes, I believe that's very, very important for a successful transition. It's essential, actually, communication and transparency. Patricia, closing remarks or key takeaways for the audience?
I think there are a couple of points I will say. There's still a significant opportunity, I believe, to unlock value that is trapped in silos. So that ability to create that kind of data abstraction that I mentioned before, so that we can break down the silos is extremely important. I believe digital twins will become, and are becoming actually, even more critical in our transition to a low carbon multi-energy system. So that will be a hugely kind of data rich environment that we will optimize and integrate. We need to remember that for digital strategies will and platform interoperability. So to enable that collaboration across suppliers, local players, governments, is quite important. So we are focused on that collaboration, on driving collaboration, as Lee said, at local level, but also at global level, to enable innovation at pace.
Perfect. Thank you for that. And finally, our keynote speaker, Lee, if you have any closing remarks for this panel. I don't know if you're talking anymore today.
No,
at least,
I've spoken enough. No, I think the final thing, just be ready to learn from each other, I'd say, especially in the game today and tomorrow. I think that's the biggest thing we've got in this space now.
Excellent. Well, thank you, and I appreciate it. So guys, I'm going to switch over to the questions. If I understand, there's another session somewhere where some questions. Wow, that's a lot of talking. Okay, let me see. Do you guys notice any? Do you see the chat board? Would you like to review a question?
I can't see the questions on this side, sorry.
You can. Okay. Well, I've got something until we can review some more. I've got one that I was talking about, and Lee mentioned it briefly. She was talking about the impacts on the new workforce. Bringing in new people. How do you guys see? And I'll leave this open. Whoever raises his hand to want to talk. How do you guys see the digital twin impacting the new workforce? Are we needing to change the mindset to be able to adapt to new workers? Do we need to comfort the older employees by telling them this isn't actually going to replace their jobs? So whoever wants to chime in here.
I can tap in. At least one of my perspectives is that I see this as a great opportunity. It's fantastic how we now kind of working with coming right from university, and within the facility, one example is that we talk about kind of the IT-OT integration, and that we are kind of converging technology-wise. With quite a few of our new employees, I see they are already there. They did learn this at school. They kind of come from, like me, like a mechanical engineer, but they have kind of the insight and knowledge and interest. Many of them were more on the kind of data programming, software development part. I think that is a huge opportunity for us to strengthen the collaboration across the disciplines.
Yeah. Maybe let me just add one thing. So it's even potentially the other way around. It's even an expectation of our new workforce that we're going into the digitalization space and have more digital gadgets, yeah, because they have grown in that area. As Lina said, they even had it in their studies, but even before in their normal life, they have grown with digitalization the last 10, 15 years. And their expectation is that, I could call it the old business, where we are operating in, is making that move to digitalization. And if we are not doing it, we are not attractive for the new workforce. 100% true.
True. Anyone else?
Rami, can I just add? I think through our reinvent journey in BP, we're encouraging everyone and our employees to look for, keep learning new skills. I'm an example actually of a petroleum engineer jumping into a digital organization, for example. So there are so many opportunities now that are opening with the transition to lower carbon energies. These skills that you have in a traditional oil and gas space are so relevant in a broader context as well. But what we're encouraging is, regardless of where you are in the organization and in your career path, keep learning, because the skills you have today are going to evolve and you're going to need to learn new things to be relevant in the future.
That's very, very well said, Patricia. And I believe most organizations are going down the path of digitizing and providing a learning platform for similar people like us. I remember rigging up frac jobs back in the day. Never thought I was going to be sitting, being a digital person. So I think it's fantastic. I just noticed, unless Lee, you have something to say, I just noticed a question in the audience. It's a question from Martin, and it wasn't addressed to anyone, but it was saying, I realize all the benefits that can be obtained from having a digital twin. Early examples have shown, however, that an appropriate management of change process is key to maintaining capabilities and value of a digital twin. What are the thoughts of the panel about management of change, or is it too early to make informed decisions and statements about the processes? Can anyone give us their 2 cents?
Maybe I can start, but to be honest, it's never too early to start with a proper and robust management of change process. And I mentioned before, when you go, especially in the area of data, data needs to be maintained and data needs to be treated as an asset. And when you make a change in the asset, when you change your steel, you have always a proper change process behind it, where multiple people look through, etc. And I think we need to establish the same rigor and discipline for data, how we treat the digital twin, how we update our 3D models, and that you have to, you must be ready with your management of change process before you start with the deployment, because just learning how to manage the change in the digital twin environment and space on the run, that brings you in a very difficult situation, and it can be very expensive at the end of the day.
Anyone else? Any comments?
Can I add just one point? I agree, Stefan. We're actually considering management of change or change requirements from even the incubation stage, like early incubation stage. But one topic that I want to add is the trend now to focus on customer centricity, like focus on the needs of the user and work the solutions with the user. We've had many examples of great solutions that have been delivered with the users in mind. They'll see the product evolving. So agility, agile delivery of solutions, small increments of value are actually quite significant, because it allows the users to interact and learn as we are developing the solution. So we've seen, for example, great products where the users get to see the product every week, even before we even think about deploying it. So that customer centricity, I think, is core in helping us simplify the management of change process.
No, I'd agree. Maybe just maybe kind of 30 seconds from my side. I actually agree with both Stefan and Patricia. I think where I've seen it work really well is you're kind of conscious on what type of environment you're going to be deploying it in. So and the inherent risk, so if you're going offshore, there's clearly kind of more MOC that you want to do than if you're trying to do kind of an onshore kind of monitoring type of pilot. So I think it's definitely a risk-based approach. But the end user experience, I think for me, we also kind of need to be aware that by going through that type of process and having more end user involvement, it actually starts to trigger questions on whether some of the processes need to evolve as well. And that's it's the constant trade-off that we get, that we want to, I think I mentioned early on that we're making things like digital twin part of our business transformation. So we should absolutely make sure it doesn't kind of go against some of our standard safety critical types of processes, but we also need to balance where the big opportunities for just a fundamentally different way of doing something. And again, I think it's just a constant dilemma that we have to be vigilant of as we're learning.
Well, that brings us to the end of our session. Thank you so much for the panel. You guys have done fantastic. I want to thank Shell, BP, and Equinor for joining us. And I hope everyone made use of this. And we'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
See you guys.